Great turnout for this seminar entitled How to Make Sure Your Pet is Properly Groomed. Sorry, wrong seminar. Obviously C7 design. We've got several people here incremental in that design. Peters and Kirk Bennion standing off to the side. And that's all the talking I'm going to do. So let's get started. I think we're all going to enjoy this, judging by the attendance. Looks like we're going to off to a good start. Thank you again. Tom Peters.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Tom Peters. Yeah, was there a Corvette theme on? I was driving down the freeway, headed to Nashville, and I saw a few Corvettes. I thought I'd pop in and just see what was going on. Okay, can you hear me now? Maybe tweak the volume a little bit. Can you all hear me back there? Yeah. Got it? Okay, cool. Anyways, hey, cool, great. Welcome, everyone. I gotta tell you, this is a bit overwhelming for me. Coming here, I've been here for probably 2, maybe 3 years. We brought a few different models down, variations of the C6 and then also the Stingray concept car. And but since then, a lot of things have happened, and I am so excited. I mentioned being a little bit overwhelmed and just excited about having an opportunity to come down and share with Corvette faithful the story of the new C7 Corvette Stingray. And there has been a lot of talent and passion that have gone into that. And I would like, before we kind of start going through the adventure that we were a part of here in a few minutes, I'd just like to maybe acknowledge a few people here that were members of this very passionate team to help contribute to the success that worked within design on this incredible new Corvette. I think Scott Munch is out here somewhere. I don't know if you can hear Scott. It's hard for me to see, but if you are, raise your hand. And I think I saw Kelly Crago and his wife here from the interior design team. And I think Ryan Vaughn might have spoken to you, I know it was earlier today or maybe even yesterday, about the interior design. And then I'd also like to acknowledge Dennis Finos, if he's in the crowd. Dennis, you're out there somewhere? I think I saw you earlier. There he is. And Dennis is, I think he's been down here maybe once before, but Dennis, I think, is just an incredibly passionate talent. You know, there are those folks that come along every once in a while in a lifetime that you work with that have that magic touch, which I think is required for anybody involved with a car such as this. And Dennis is responsible for the graphics that go on the car, interior and exterior, the wonderfully new design Corvette cross flags, and for instance, even the lettering, all that goes into that. And probably something that's really near and dear to all of ours, especially I'm included in that, is the Stingray logo. That's something we've been working on probably for maybe 10 years. 10 years, I just had 6 or 8. 10 years we've been. I remember doing a little doodle for him, said we got to get this going and see if we can get this resurrected. It's so powerful. And I gave a little doodle to Dennis, and this car is the result of that right now. It wasn't. We're not going to put that out to the car lived up to the name and all that the Stingray stands for. And I tell you, Dennis has done an outstanding job, and that little badge means so much and embodies so much in terms of what customers expect and have grown to understand in terms of what Corvette is all about. There's a magic there that is absolutely fantastic. And Dennis done an outstanding job with that, just fantastic. So a few words there. But to start things off, I just thought we'd give you an overview kind of maybe from the beginning and then through the process here and how we did this new Corvette Stingray. And it all really begins, I mentioned the word passion. We've all heard that word before. And I will tell you, without the incredible focus of having that talent, passion and dedication, cars like this aren't really achievable. So when we go about formulating the team, bringing them together, we can make sure they have that element of understanding. Maybe not necessarily fully immersed in what Corvette is in terms of its history and where it's going, but those people that have that magic talent, that's what I look out for in creating a team. That includes designers, sculptors, and engineers that work within the studio that work in an incredibly integrated way throughout the whole development process with all of our partners in marketing, manufacturing, engineering. All the aspects that go into a car like this have to be incredibly focused on this car and talented. So with that, if I maybe go next slide here. I flip the button there. I think there might be a title slide I'm going to begin with. You guys are able to push the button there. You're working it. At any rate, what I start out with here is talk about a little bit about inspiration. And go to the next slide, please. We know since the last Corvette was designed, the C6, the world has changed incredibly. Everything around us, and one of those elements are technology, obviously. I think the heightened expectations of customers, and one of the things I think is incredibly special about Corvette is, in terms of technology, it's not technology for its own sake, but it's something that has to fit incredibly well with what the Corvette mission is. And from a design standpoint, quintessential inspiration has always been aircraft. And within recent history here, how that has evolved in terms of the technology, the function, the performance. Aircraft have always been kind of a symbol and something to draw upon from a designer standpoint on where vehicles go in the future. And over the years, what has happened is it has matured in that it's gone from, we all recall the fins of the 50s, in which some of those aircraft inspiration ideas are literally translated. We've evolved that into more, at least from my standpoint, we've worked with my team on this, is take those elements that are quintessential to say jet fighters, in this case YF-22, and translate that in an automotive vein. And why has it always been a source of inspiration is because aircraft, particularly fighter aircraft, are purpose-built, they're super high performance, leading-edge technology, and they really pave the way for where things are heading in the future. There's a combination of just incredible brain power, expertise, and talent. And we want to capture that in an automotive sense. The passion is very similar, I've found over the course of my career. And so when we developed our team pulled together, we've noticed this. It's not like I say, hey, you need to start looking at aircraft. The designers that come in the studio naturally gravitate towards that. So we have a great mix of experienced designers and some very young designers, men and women that come into the studio to work on this project, both interior and exterior. And sure enough, in the sketches, and you'll probably see this over the course of when we release these images, you'll see aircraft as a major part of it. So we felt also they're a symbol of the times, and the Corvette is definitely a symbol of the times. You'll notice, for instance, on this aircraft in particular, there's different shapes even to the exhaust outlets on them. Next slide, please. So when you look at a quick walk around here of the Stingray, there are certain other elements that I had in mind in terms of going forward here that I at least tried to communicate to the team at a very high level and let them run with it. Because I feel it's very important to maybe set the tone, but let the design team come together and develop a synergy that would come up with a number of solutions, which you will see during the course of this presentation, to let it take its own course. And when the proposals are presented either in 2D form, sketch form, in scale form, and then in full-size clay, and we've had a number, which you'll see a number of full-size models, you have a sense for what strikes you as being the right solution. And I will tell you, we looked under a lot of rocks and tried many different configurations. But I will tell you, from my standpoint, working with this team or leading this team, there are certain elements that I wanted to make sure that were in place before we hit the road. And I mentioned people, but also, and then inspiration, but also take a look at certain elements of what makes a Corvette a Corvette. To me, it is pushing the envelope. I wanted to really dramatically make this car a step beyond what the current car is. That's what we're charged with in terms of a mission as we go forward. That's our whole purpose within design, is to really push things as hard as we can and take full advantage and celebrate the technology in terms of incorporating what we've learned from racetrack, on the racetrack, or what else is out there that can be brought in and contribute to the ultimate performance of this vehicle. Another aspect I will tell you is we are involved with the latest technology in terms of sculpting, 3D surface development. We certainly incorporate that, but I'm here to tell you this afternoon that what makes the difference between a really great car and just an exceptionally outstanding vehicle is that human element, the passionate aspect of hand interface with the clay. So we have designers and sculptors that are very well versed in the computer, but we also have some that have the ability to do hands-on sculpting. Designers that come out of the schools have definite computer capability, but they also are able to sketch by hand, and we'll scan those in and bring them into the computer and go through the process, which you'll also see examples here. But I've seen this over the course of my career, that you have to have that human element. So when you look at those cars' shape and its sculptures from a design standpoint, I firmly believe the fact that we've had very talented sculptors work on the surfacing through the whole course of the project that involves not only just the shape, but how the wind tunnel affects it aerodynamically, the manufacturing requirements. At the end of the day, that passion that is translated through the hands of those very talented sculptors comes right through the sheet metal, and I'm not sure what to call it other than there's a special resonance or a glow that comes from that car. It may not be recognizable first, but there's just something special about it, and that's where it comes from, is the hand sculptors that get it in the clay and have it come through the whole course of development through computer, and then cutting this for the steel dies, and then the body panels that come out. Somehow that's transmuted right through it. It sounds kind of maybe a little bit hokey, but I'm telling you, here to tell you that's the truth. I think that's why the car is so popular, is because there is that artistic quality that comes right through the surface of these machines. And I think that is the magic of what makes cars different, and that is then the quintessential magic of what makes Corvette so special. So when we developed the surface, we had this in mind. I mentioned Stingray is my VP, Ed Welburn, said years ago, probably close to maybe 8 years ago, I started trying to get this Stingray going, is that, you know, Tom, we're not going to put that badge on a car unless it's right, and you stand back and look at it, it's worthy of the name. It says Stingray without it on there, and that was one of the other things I had in my mind in leaving the team to go forward into developing this next car. Next slide, please. So you can see the sectioning on the doors, the hood, the front fender, very functional from an aerodynamic standpoint, which we'll talk about. But I will also tell you that without the integration of the design team and the engineering team, manufacturing, all those that go into developing the surface of what's under the skin, have, and again, in my 30-plus year career, I've never experienced the level of just incredible intertwined relationship that was so focused on making this car the best it could be and push the envelope. People will say, well, you know, designers, those are the creative types, they're the creative ones, and I'm here to tell you that in order to achieve a car like this, everybody has to be equally as creative to generate something like this. So I just want to say how proud I am of the team that developed this, and the fact that I feel very honored to be part of a team that works so closely together. It's hard to imagine, but when you focus on it, you can see in the car that in order to achieve some of these shapes, these openings, the stance, the performance of this vehicle, you have to have this incredibly integrated relationship between all these folks together to have this come out. One of the examples, we'll just briefly here, we'll walk around later, but just as an example, for instance, I wanted to have a very sculptural section in the hood right there, just inboard of the headlamp. we're working closely with Taj and his team, communicated that through the initial models, but there's a hood hinge in there. So we worked very closely together to get that hood hinge package just so tightly down below the surface to allow us to achieve that section. So it almost defies physics the way that hood actually opens. Another one is the door. Take a look at the section of the door, the sculpture. It's very expressive, very powerful, but also very functional. Guess what? You have to open up the door. In fact, I'm not even sure if I don't know how that door even opens. What the guys did is work incredible magic, but it does, and it does it beautifully. Next slide, please. And then overall, just looking at how the shapes work together, the rear profile, they have to be beautiful, but also incredibly functional. So I will tell you the relationship between all these folks to bring this together, I think just did an outstanding job. The other thing I will tell you is we wanted to move the needle on several aspects. I will tell you, I know there's there's different camps of sensitivity, for instance, around the tail lamps, but I'll tell you, we're charged with pushing this car in farther in the 21st century. The other thing I had in mind here is, I haven't said this to too many people, but I think in my mind the target customer was probably somewhere between an 8-year-old and a 14-year-old boy or girl for this. I felt that was a new and up-and-coming market that we want to aim towards and really capture the imagination. So we were listening close to our young designers and engineers in developing this. And there were some things on this car that I think are very striking, but they're done in a very beautiful, dramatic way. So if you haven't had a chance yet, make sure you examine the car very closely. The other thing I will say is you have to look forward to when you're able to see this car out on the street. It's just spectacular, I think. Next slide, please. Also, in conjunction with the design, we had to keep in mind, since the format is really a convertible, we wanted to make sure that we encompassed that at the same time we did the coupe. So these cars were really designed together. And I would tell you, under no circumstance we ever sacrificed or make a decision that biased one or the other. They all will work simultaneously to optimize the configuration of both of these vehicles, both coupe and convertible. And there's something about a convertible with the roof off, just makes it lower, wider, and even more expressive. And I hope you agree when you have a chance to look at this vehicle in here and then outside as well. Next slide, please. Another view of the top up. We pay every bit as much attention with the top up as the top down, because it does make a statement, and you see them out on the road with the top up, and in many cases, I think today probably be a good case when you'd see a top up. And I think working with the vendors, we make sure that we take care of selecting the correct vendors that go along with our team in developing these different components of the vehicle. And the top receives an incredible amount of attention down to the stitch line, looking at it from every angle, sighting down where the stitch lines are, then where the panels come together, even the sectioning to make sure it has just the right fullness, just the right shape when it's up and when it folds and then is redeployed. And you can see how the lines go, kind of sweep through out of the side cove and then up and over the back. A huge amount of attention is paid to that. It's not one of those deals where you go through, well, it's going to be convertible, we'll just kind of slice it and put a top on it. Every millimeter of that surface is attended to and sculpted by hand and then ultimately in the computer, but is refined to the nth degree. Next slide, please. And again, just kind of recap here. Again, just knowing that we're heading well into the 21st century, the Corvette's got to be there. We know we have customers that are, such as the folks that are here this afternoon and for this weekend, that are extremely passionate, know the history, the heritage, are involved with what this car on a daily basis or even on the racetrack, what this car is capable of and how that is expressed through its aesthetics. And then going forward, we want to draw upon all those elements, which Kirk is going to kind of share some of the details here in a minute, and ultimately culminated in a car that I think is striking and will be just a powerful Corvette statement for years to come. Next slide, please. Okay, so with that, Kirk up next, and we're going to walk you through a few more details. Can you guys hear everything okay back there in the back? Yeah. Good, thanks.
All right, Tom, thanks. Good afternoon, everybody. You know, as you can see, Tom Peters is an incredible design visionary, and I got to tell you, as a member of his team, we worked really hard to capture that vision in every detail through the car. And I think this car really proves that out, that we don't lift and we just keep pushing until that last ounce is done. Next, please. What we did at the beginning of the program is we opened up this sketch blitz to every GM design studio. Believe it or not, there are 10 global studios. And what we internally call a sketch blitz, and typically we'll give the teams out there 2 to 3 weeks to do sketches on top of what is their normal workload. And here again, this is done not only because we want to see the ideas, but we also want to tap into the passion of having a large design team like this. And really, it's about giving every designer that opportunity to submit their ideas, their thoughts of what a next Corvette should be. Next. So, in wanting to keep the passion pure and and the ideas flowing, we don't want to get things too complicated. So what we did was we delivered to the team just 5 preliminary goals of what we wanted to do with the car. And beginning with the front, we thought we needed a new bolder front, something that was more functional. We worked early on with engineering on changing the orientation of the radiator package, and now leans forward with the functional hood extractor, very much like what we learned at our Corvette racing team. And it has the same benefits of increasing downforce in the front and optimizing cooling flow and reducing CD. The other thing we wanted to do is we wanted a new upper graphic. I would tell you as fans of Corvette, we've had the basket handle continuously since 1978. And we really felt for this car to look different and be better and be different that we needed to change that. We didn't want to lose the functionality of the target top, but we wanted to here again give the car a block away, 100 yards away, new look, and make sure that it's distinguished. So creating that yellow opening was key. Also, I would tell you on the side cove, we can't imagine doing a modern Corvette without a new side cove. So we were looking for this element to be more expressive, more distinctive, and maybe a little bit more upscale. And then the form vocabulary. Tom kind of alluded to this. When you look at the F-22, it goes from very curvaceous surfaces to very crisp edges, and there's a lot of what I call specularity in that surface. There's a lot of contrast. We've got these extreme round sections ending at this very crisp edge, and that was key in finding this new form vocabulary. So that was one of the goals. And then the back end, we really felt that, when we were being critical of ourselves, we felt like the general arrangement of the car hadn't changed with lamp placement, license plate, exhaust. So we really wanted the team to look at how much we could shake up the back end as well. Next, please. Now, as you can imagine, in less than 2 weeks, we had over 300 sketches in our inbox. And so Tom and I get the task of going through these, and it's great to do. You're sifting through a lot of ideas, and it really gives you a foundation, a basis as to it gives you a sense of what you're looking for. I mean, there's some stuff that was tried that we did use, but here again, that's a great tool to have, and it's a lot of ideas to leverage. Next, please. This is an early snapshot of the sketches that were submitted. It's hard to see, but there's like 3 20-foot boards in the background there, and they're filled with, I think there's about 80 sketches on each board. And these were early scale models that we had done in the beginning. Next, please. The other thing that we did early on is we took 5 different designs into the wind tunnel. And typically we don't do this, but we really felt it was important here again, searching for this next Corvette, that we wanted to get a bandwidth of learning. We wanted to take 5 different themes in there and have an understanding, will this get to our functional aero targets, or is it too far off? And when you take 5 in, we found that there were 2 themes that were within reach of the target, and then we had 1 in the middle, but we had 2 that were just too far off. And we would have had to change the car too much to get to a good functional aero target. So that early learning really helped us a lot in creating a bandwidth, here again, of aero learnings. Next. The other thing we wanted to look at too was look at the proportion of the car and what can we do to make the proportions new, better, different. And that the first thing we did was we widened the track. Obviously this helps for handling, whatnot. You know, for design, we love the stance of a wider car. So we've added an inch overall to the width, front and rear. The other thing we did is we optimized the roof height. And that we really wanted to reduce the frontal area of the car. And of course, the car looking lower definitely looks better. But what we're able to do is maintain the interior height on the inside without giving up headroom. And we compressed the typical sections, and we were able to lower it about a ½ inch over the occupant, but that's on the exterior only. The other thing we did on the upper is we lowered the center windshield line. Now here again, it was more of a graphic change. We just kind of felt that we needed this upper line that was maybe got the car a little bit more serious looking. Here again, helped compress the upper and looked a little more sleek. And that was done through optimizing the typical again. And then we stretched the wheelbase. You know, the front wheel moved another 25 mils forward, but this further enhances and supports that front mid-engine layout. The other thing that we talked about was letting the car breathe a little bit. And by that I mean, we let this car be a little longer than the current Grand Sport, in that we kind of were looking at the shape of the front and the shape of the back end of the car, whereas if we could just let the plan views work to the theme that we're doing and not worry about getting to a number. Because if you take, you know, a center line measurement, you're really just measuring the peak of the fascia. It doesn't really speak to the mass of the vehicle per se. We kept the corners tight, but here again, it just allowing the design to flow better was a big enabler for us. And also too, for proportional enhancements, getting a 19 and 20 inch wheel on the Z51 package we felt was really huge to the look of the car. Next. Now, here again I mentioned the work on the front end. This was key in changing the orientation of the radiator, the CRFM. And this was actually started even before the program started. And we kind of do this, you know, I tell people, you can't think of Corvette as just one timeline, one car. You know, we're a synergist team, and you know, as we get ideas, and if we're able to work on them, we work on them. This is one of those that was kind of behind closed door. Hey, we've got this idea. We think we want to do this. Let's get an early start on it. And it was very key to making that hood vent functional. Thanks. Here's some of the architectural changes. You know, the big one here was the backlight. And that you know, if you're here again, be critical of ourselves, we felt the backlight, we did get some distortion in the corners. It wasn't good for that over-the-shoulder view as you were driving or passing, and that's here again, from a design standpoint, we wanted to do graphic, but we also wanted to be functional. Now, when you look at the slide on the left, you can see that that's quite a bit of change to that rear hatch opening, and that was no easy task. And here again, you know, a lot of credit goes to our engineers on that, because they were able to not only enable this cut line, which is very unique from the side view in that, but they were also able to hide the strut in the water trench that you have there. So you no longer have a visible strut on the interior. We felt that was a big win. Next. Tell people, believe it or not, we work outside a lot. One of our best design tools is our viewing patio, which is about the size of a football field. And to really understand what you have in the design and how best to adjust lines and surfaces in that is really to be able to get back on the car and look at it outside. So you'll see here, next, that we do a lot outside. We're laying lines. Now we'll lay those lines and then we'll take the car inside. Obviously, because we need time to work those surfaces. And we'll do a little bit of both. Here you see the guys working the surface by hand, but there is a mill in the background there, so we're constantly interchanging between digital and what I would call analog math modeling. Next. And then we're back outside. Here again, we like to use this tool a lot. Now, of interesting note, you'll notice the vehicle behind there. This has actually been a design vehicle since the early 60s. And if you can believe on not so good days like today, a bunch of us would pack into that van and we would drive around the model, whether it be rain or snow, here again, using the benefit of being outside and being able to get back and look at the car. Next, please. Now, when we generated all these themes, you know, there's a point where you have to start distilling down these selections. And after, countless sketches, and I couldn't tell you how many scale models, because, we would do a scale model in 2 weeks. We didn't like it, we would redo it. So, and we would keep that pattern. I think we had probably 8 stations of scale models going that were in constant states of flux or whatever. But we did have to get down to where, okay, we're going to get down to 2 themes. We're going to have a little bit of a shootout, and then we're going to see which one we feel is best when we get them outside. Now, as you can appreciate with the nature of design, sometimes it isn't always that cut and dry, and sometimes it isn't just, I like this one and that's it. We're typically we're still searching, we're looking to put the best stuff on the car. So when we had this review, and that next please, we really felt that the strength of the one was the body side in the front, and the strength of the other was the back end, the back light, and the upper. Which you might think, well, that's kind of crazy, but that's what Tom and I have to do sometimes, is you have to be able to take those elements that you feel are really good, next please, and integrate them into one car. And that's what we did. And here again, working to Tom's vision and really trying to harness the passion of the design, I felt we were able to do that. And it just so happened it worked out to where these elements really flowed well with one another. And when people ask what's the favorite part of the car, I usually tell them it's the cohesiveness of the design, getting everything to flow and everything to interchange in one continuous good flow.
And if I could add to that, a few slides back, don't move it, but it was a side view, but we actually even looked at a split window version of this, because that's one of the things you're always asked is, oh, why don't you guys redo that? If you do a Stingray, why don't you bring back the split window? Well, we tried everything, and you know what the thing is, this car, again, had to be going well into the 21st century. It's kind of a neat idea, but the 63 is so wonderful, we felt that was the right place for that car, and we tried it on this one. It just didn't seem serious, just didn't work in this time frame. So we looked at it, but then we moved on to Kirk's point.
Having the quarter glass, which Corvette had in the C1 first generation, but when we went to a full DLO design element and had the buttress element in the back, when you added, to Tom's point, when you added the split window, you actually had like 3 strakes there in the back light, and it just it closed up the back end of the car too much, made it tough to see out. We really felt that it didn't fit in with this particular design. Next, please. Here again, we even do our design reviews outside. Here again, big benefit of learning. You can see where Tom and I are here with upper management, Ed Welburn, and Ed, I would tell you, Ed's very passionate. He's probably been the most passionate VP we've had since Bill Mitchell in that. So he's constantly, and we keep him involved, and he likes to stay abreast of what we're doing, obviously. Next.
One other thing I might add to that too is that in terms of the character of the front end of this vehicle, I felt that it was important for it to have a very strong, powerful face. We wanted it to be aggressive yet beautiful. You don't want it to look mean or angry, but very, in the design studio, we refer to it as kind of a hungry look, almost like an animal that hadn't eaten in a while. It's, in this case, it's probably its favorite lunchtime snack would be like a Porsche. So, you look at it, it's got, it has a face on it. There's a mouth, the lamps are eyes. It does have a distinct personality, but it's got to be a machine. And I think that's one of the other aspects we look at this in terms of pumping character and personality into this vehicle.
And to Tom's comment, you can see here, these were sketches done by Hassab Lee, our lead designer in the studio. And you can see that character that Tom's talking about in the front end here. And now, interesting, when Hassab created this image, I would kid him that this is our black market Corvette image in that, because this is how, not every country sells a Corvette, so this is how some countries were going to get that car. Next, please. And here again, this is what Tom talked about earlier, the idea of enabling some of that passion that you would see in an F-22 and being able to execute that in a Corvette. You can kind of see in this image, there are similarities in how that surface treatment is really addressed. Next, please. We talked a lot about the hand modeling and it's fast, and we would never, our team, we basically have 50% of the sculpting team is what I would call analog hands-on, the other half is digital. And our digital folks, is really, that's where we master the surface. And that's where we work hard in getting getting the surfaces and those highlights as perfect as we can, getting them over the criteria, making them manufacturable. But that's what you see is really generated from the digital surface. Next, please. But just to give you an idea how digital surfacing has evolved, not to read everything off here, but just the second line down, for C5, our surface tolerance is a 0.05 millimeter, and that's the tolerance that we're developing in the surfaces. C6, it was a 0.01 millimeter tolerance. Now, as you can imagine, things progress. Well, now this C7 was actually surfaced to a 0.009 millimeter tolerance. So it tells you, we try to make these surfaces as perfect as we can, so they go into the tools as true as they can, and this enables us to get the best quality we can out of the parts. Next, please. Here again, a lot of time spent in the wind tunnel. I tell people sometimes we aspire to the F-22 because we spend so much time in the wind tunnel. And that I think we had no less than 400 hours on this car as well. And but this car is a little bit different in that there's a lot more demands placed on it. We've got forward-facing brake cooling for the Z51 package, having the hood extractor, and here again the grille is a front flow only. We're no longer a bottom breather or even a partial bottom breather. And getting this air through the hood extractor took a lot of development in CFD as well, computational flow dynamics. And when you look at the blades on that extractor, you'll notice that each blade is orientated at a different pitch. And that was done so that the air could flow out on an optimal flow pattern. I tell people too that, we talk about elements being functional. Well, ours are not only functional, but they're optimal. And that's a whole nother level to get stuff like that going. Side cove is actually functional, contributes to the low drag target that we have. And then new for us are these rear quarter inlets. And these are there to take air into heat exchangers that are located behind the rear wheels. One side is for your automatic transmission, the other side is for your differential. Just to give you an idea, this location, you see that on the race car, and it's very functional on the race car, but our needs are a little bit different in that, because here again, we're trying to get to a cooler for your automatic transmission. Well, we had to flow 8 cubic meters of airflow per minute through those openings, and that didn't come at any easy task. We did no less than, I think, 16 iterations in CFD, but here again, careful optimization of the blades, and even the mesh texture, because we needed something there to protect things from being dropped in. It's a little bit shaped like a basketball net, where it's tight at the bottom and it's spread more at the top. But here again, that was the learning, what it took to get that much air that was crucial to the car. And then the back end, all that air that we're taking in is now coming out by the tail lamps and also in the lower fascia. Next, please. Here's an example of what the computational flow dynamics, what I think CFD looks like. Now what's really nice about these ribbons that you see is electronically we're able to activate one of those ribbons, and that'll take a tracer from that ribbon from the start of the car to the back of the car, and it really gives us a sense of where the air came from and where it's going, so that you can really manage to the nth detail of where that air is going. Next, please. This shows you a little bit more where the air is coming around the windshield, going in the top of the quarter, and where it's coming out the bottom. And obviously, with the clean brake and the very functional Z51 rear spoiler we have, and that's key to keeping the car planned. But you can see the aero character back there, what's really going on. Next, please.
Those images look incredibly beautiful and they are mesmerizing. You can have animations of them, but they are extremely telling in terms of exactly what level of functionality those vents are. And I would also tell you that, Kirk, we probably spend as much time, for sure you have from a design standpoint, much time on those grille textures as the entire body, I think.
Yeah, all our grills, as you can appreciate, they're done to the minimal section, minimal draft, and here again, it's really working with engineering and trying to enable that through manufacturing. The other big win with this car, not only do we come in at 0.290 CD, but we also come in with the lowest lift number ever for Corvette. And it's so much so that it's actually better than, I don't want to disappoint a few 01 folks, but we actually have a better aero package than the 01. And when we did that car, that was the best we knew how to do. But here again, with this forward tilted CRFM, we have a much more functional package up front, which is easier to leverage in the back of the car. Next, please. Here again, we talked about Dennis Finos' work and that absolute phenomenal job on the cross flags, adding a little bit more V, a little more gesture, a little more speed to the emblem. We really felt was key, and it really embellished what we wanted to do with the car exterior. Thanks.
Dennis Finos, god of graphics.
Also, you know, what we talked about with the Stingray, that was huge. And here again, you know, like Tom said, we weren't going to put that on the car unless we really felt the car could support, you know, an iconic graphic like that. So we really made this decision very late in the program. Next, please. Here again, you can kind of see the heritage, you know, going from the 59 Stingray show car to the 63 production car to where now we've reinstated it for the 2014 C7. Next, please. Part of what we were doing with the car, and you know, here again, you know, you're looking at ideas, we're looking at proportion, but there's also this build sheet list that you need to develop of things that are going to push the car to the next market level, and that's kind of was our goal too. Is how can we get this car better in the luxury sport and still maintain a good bandwidth from a luxury sport to a motorsport look. And then, so key things were having, you know, a painted grille, premium painted carbon flash metallic, chrome insert, LED lamp technology. We've got LEDs everywhere on this car. We've got an HID bifunctional projector, which is huge. We have a new finish. It's a stainless based black chrome that's on the headlamp bezel. It really looks good. It will be dark in some lights, it lightens up in others, but it's a very rich looking texture. And here again, the painted bezel on the hood. All the exterior accents are painted carbon flash as well. Next. The back of the car, here again, you want some symmetry, so a lot of these premium details that you have in the front, you like to mimic those onto the back of the vehicle. And then, so here again, carbon flash for the bezels, LED technology. You know, we talked about the tail lamps. They are an indirect LED technology. In other words, the LEDs are not visible. They're on a horizontal plane. They are shining into a parabola collector, per se. And then the chrome, there's a black chrome exhaust bezel. And here again, this finish kind of balances out the headlamp finish. But this is really key for the car because we wanted to clean up the lower back end of the car. And working with our manufacturing folks in Bowling Green, enabling the exhaust system to be passed through the rear fascia was key. And then the exhaust tips, they're polished stainless. They're all new as well. We got to a larger diameter, I think we're 4¼ inches. But I tell you, even those exhaust tips are no small task. I would tell you, you know, Tad's director, we nickname him, he's the mass police. He doesn't want you to put anything on the car that should be any heavier than it needs to be. And for us to get these larger exhaust tips, he was after us. We were chasing grams out of each tip to get to a weight target to enable those larger tips. So that's kind of how serious, you know, the watch for mass is. And I know one program came to Tad one time. They asked him, what can we do to make our cars lightweight like a Corvette? What should we do? And Tad's answer was start from the beginning. Next, please. One detail that we didn't want to forget is a picture from when we did our Detroit reveal at the Industrial Center there, was we didn't want to forget front license plate placement. You probably didn't know, but 37 of 50 states require a front plate. 2 of those 37 have a minimal to ground dimension that has to be maintained for them. So what we did in wanting to have a really good customer-driven location was we are going to be selling the C7 with 2 license plate brackets. And we'll have what we call customer choice, where you'll have the bracket seen here, which is designed to fit in the middle of the grille. And now in placing this here, we worked at 2 different flow targets. And in other words, we have a street flow target. So this panel, we call it the Aero panel, will reduce your CD and help your miles per gallon when you're driving this car on the highway. If you want to go to the track and do an HPD event or whatever, Then you've got to pull this plate out of there, and you need the full airflow of that entire grill. The second plate that we offer is actually, I hate to say it, but it's a little bit on the forehead. And it's there because of that min ground to clearance. And here again, it's customer's choice. You know, when I talk to my law enforcement pals, they would tell me that if you're getting pulled over because your license plate was they felt your license plate was too low, well, there's probably a few other things that you were doing that they didn't like. So generally, if the plate's on the front of the car, and it's filling up a position that looks right for the car, we don't think you would have any problem. Here again, it's a customer choice thing. Next. Here again, supporting that luxury sport theme. You saw Ryan's presentation, very rich interior materials. We want very rich exterior combinations. Sterling silver premium painted wheels, cyber gray. Next, please. Next time. Accented by Ryan's interior here, Kalahari. I think he's got octane black with this one. Next, please. And then being able to swing that the other direction, and here again, get to what we call a more motorsport-driven look. Black wheels, exposed carbon fiber, rooftop. This is actually showing a hood-only stripe, a stinger stripe that you can get that'll match the same color as the hood extractor. Next, please. And this would be as one of the interiors that you could get with it, on a very striking red, adrenaline red and black interior. Next, please. Dimensionally. Here again, we talked earlier about letting the design breathe, not working just to a dimension per se, but really working out the plan views of the car that we felt really looked good with that proportion. We also wanted to keep an eye and make sure that we were being responsible within the sports car segment in that. And this is a comparison to the 2013 Porsche 911. And as it worked out, I think we're only a 1/10 of an inch longer than the new Porsche. We got a little bit longer, but they've been getting longer as they've been going too, as different needs are baked into the car.
You know what's interesting to note about this profile too is that look at the hood height between the front engine car and the car that's in the trunk. I mean, the motor that's in the trunk.
Yeah, in fact, that our hood is much lower. Thanks. Next, please. Here again, getting back to the inspiration that Tom talked to on the tail lamps and that we really wanted a unique nighttime signature. We think that when you see this car going down the road, that you'll know that it's distinctive. It'll say it's a C7 Corvette. We kind of felt that we've done the rounds for a long time. They've been on the car since '61. But we felt, rounds have been adopted by so many other manufacturers that when you're going down the road with modern lamp technology, with a lot more cars doing LEDs, we just really felt that they weren't as unique to the car that we needed this to be. And these really fit the shape of the car. We did do things where we tried crop rounds, different things that just didn't fit the car like this layout did. Next, please. So this is a little video that our design team created internally.
I think that was Kirk driving the car as well.
That video, the CFD, the ribbons that you saw floating over, because those were the real programs. That wasn't something that was animated or made up, but that was actually the CFD program as that air really is shaped over the car. And to Tom's point, I was able to, they needed a little bit of driving. We had the real drivers doing real work. They needed someone to go take the car around on the track, and they needed a little more dramatic driving and whatnot. But when we went out there, we did this at the Milford race course and that, with a team of our photographers and videographers and that. And they said, well, we want you to come around this turn, this big bend. We want you to come around hot. We want the car about a foot away from the camera. And then we're going to get you going from the inside of the track to the outside and then down the straight. We want you to come through hot. So it's all right, I like hot. That's fun. So I'm at the back of the track, and I've got the radio, and they give me the signal. And I come around this. It's a nice big right-hand sweeper. I come around, fourth gear, 7,000 RPMs. Got it moving pretty good. Fly by that camera about a foot away, and I get down the track, and I'm thinking, well, I think that was what they wanted. It was about 140 in the car rear. So I get to the end, and the guys were like, could you do that one more time, a little less speed, please? It was a little too much hot. But, we spent the next 2 days driving that course back and forth. Now, with them looking for the video and stuff, or what they wanted within the drama, there was an area on the back S's that was the second set, the slower S's or whatever, but they were like, well, we want you over here on the track. And I said, well, that's offline. And we were doing this like in late October, so you can imagine the track wasn't not only filled with debris, but it was like golf ball sized debris or whatever. So I was like, all right, well, I'll get the car through there. They were set up, same thing on the corner. Come around, we want you a foot off the camera. Well, I come up over the hill, here again, hot, and when you're offline, you're in that, or whatever. Needless to say, I had the back end of the car out a little bit, and you could have seen the eyes of of our photographers, because they're looking at me thinking, oh no, you're just waiting to jump out of the way or whatever. But it stayed caught or whatever. But yeah, we went sailing by with just a little bit of pitch to the car. So actually on the radio, they were like, don't do that again. We don't like that. Just keep the car straight. Well, anyways, part of when we did this presentation, we did it for the Auto Week Design Forum. The assignment was, who is your market? And we said to ourselves, well, really, our market is multi-generational. We're trying, we believe Corvette is one of the life's rewards, and everyone should be able to get a Corvette or experience a Corvette at some level. So we said, this is kind of who we're looking at. Next slide, please. Of course, if we told you a little more particular, of course, we want to be your first car. We think everyone 5, 6, or 7 should at least be starting with a Corvette. And this is actually one of our products done by Newbright, who does an assortment of RC cars based on the C7 design. Next, please. We also, for as they get a little older, 10, 14, or whatever, we want to be your first drive. We want to be the car that you're driving in Gran Turismo, and we're hoping it's going to look a little bit like this. Next, please. Part of fulfilling the assignment, we said, all right, well, we'll tell you who our customer is. And we said, you know what, our target customer is a car enthusiast. People enjoy cars, love to drive, love to take care of them, love to show them, love to track them, but that's our guys. And then the next slide, please. Because we don't want to forget the people that own more than one of them. And we know we have a lot of collectors here, so we don't want to forget about you either. Okay, so, next slide. So with that said, Tom and I will open it up to question and answer. You're in the picture. Hey, Harlan, back up the picture one. Oh, go right there. That's our customer base. Q&A slide, please, Harlan. It gets into price versus manufacturability. And you can do squares, but obviously it's a little different manufacturing process. It's a little pricier, maybe a little tougher to line up. But here again, it wasn't when you're having to spend money on the car. We really felt that the 4 rounds, was a better tip for the price. And you kind of have to balance your budget. We wanted to make sure we had premium finishes, good lighting, but that was where we wanted to do.
Yeah, but I might also add to that too from an aesthetic standpoint. You look at, again, every shape imaginable, said, when you look at the back of a Corvette or any car, even the front, I refer to it as kind of a composition. So it's the balance of the right shapes play into that as well in terms of related to the practical aspects, but also how is it different elements, not only what shapes they are, but where they are in proximity to each other, so the overall statement comes across fresh Corvette. So there's a lot that goes into that. Will.
In the book, All Corvettes Are Red, the first color panel in there was a picture in the lower left of a rear end of a red Corvette, and it said, for the design consideration of the C5, this was submitted by a young engineer or designer named Kirk Bennion, but it was rejected as being too extreme. I want to know if you sat on that for 20 years waiting for the right time to put it on the car, because it looks like the C7.
When Jim Schefter wrote that book, I would tell you he had a golden pass at GM, and he could go into any studio and be a part of any meeting, and actually he would end up hanging out with us as we were sketching and doing scale models and stuff like that. So he was just a great guy to be around, and we appreciated his comments and that. So yeah, he saw some stuff that some things that went on that and that's always the push. Tom will tell you, we would have too much. We'd rather have too much push in the beginning, and not enough. And then that's what gives the design legs in that, so it'll endure a good path or whatever. But yeah, just one last note on that book. I had lunch with John Cafaro, and he was just beside himself, giggling, because Jim had given him a copy of the book that was uncensored. And Jim wrote everything that happened in the studio. And of course, you gotta remember in those days it was Boys Town, so we were rascals when the door was closed, and we cleaned up when we had to go out the door. But anyways, it was just neat all what Jim captured in that concept.
Maybe there was a roof reporter sketch I think that came up for a photograph. I guess I would say, over the years and through the design process, there are many themes that kind of come up that may have some familiarity or maybe a theme that could be reoccurring. But I can tell you, at least in my memory in the studio, the work that was generated was all fresh and new. And in fact, the theme that was generated ultimately up to C7 was actually, I don't even know if he was even, well, he probably had to been like 4 or 5 years old at the time. But there are some things I think that kind of reoccur, come up by virtue of accident or just by common influences. So I think it's just happenstance. There wasn't any, at least I can tell you in my recollection, there was no determined selection of things that were previously done. No conspiracy here.
All right, well, I got
Pure passion.
I got a couple of questions at that time. You know, when I used to be around with Big Joe Spillman, we used to always kind of keep an eye on the interior dimensions to make certain that the big guys could sit in there and they wouldn't have the rooftop down on their head, and we wouldn't have to ride with the gangster lean, you know, like this. And, you know, I had a lot of people ask me, have I tested it out? And I told them no, but I believe Joe Spillman may have. But Joe said he had plenty of headspace. Of course, you got to worry about cross car too, but maybe you might speak to that issue. And then the other question I had was, I noticed on the convertible, I didn't see those quarter louvers, you know, the air flow like you were talking about on the coupe. And I hope that you can say something about why the difference. Did you not have any need on the convertible to have transmission cooling or differential cooling in the back? Yeah.
No, we can speak to that.
Yeah, you can speak to that.
Yeah.
Since I had a mic, I said I better slip 2 questions in right quick.
Yeah. First of all, Will, and appropriate for you to do that, I will tell you, it's personal preference relative to how you sit in a vehicle. I can't say exactly how it feels to each individual. You just have to get there and check it out, Will, just like the other folks have. I have sat in it. I tell you, I haven't spent a whole lot of time behind the wheel. Kirk obviously has, Taz and his team. It suits me very well. But again, you have to be the ultimate judge. Just look forward to the time you get into one yourself on that one. And then for the hood scoops, you know, there's a lot that comes in on the intakes. There's a lot that goes into there in terms of what's buying for the particular real estate, in terms of how we have to package the kinematics or the actual functional elements on the top, and then there's more than one ways to skin a cat. So we looked at that relative to getting that executed. We'll explain details on that.
Yeah, well, there's actually an extra cooler for the convertible that goes horizontally along the back near the engine cradle. And then, because we just couldn't get air through the quarters to it, so the convertible will have its own heat exchange that will function like one of the sides will. And on the interior fit, I think I saw Ryan in here before, but I would tell you between Ryan Vaughn and Craig Sass, we had two of the biggest designers, tallest, widest designers in our staff working on that interior. So you got to take it up with them. But they say they fit in it. I believe you're going to fit in it.
Yeah, I'll tell you. Well, let me tell you. Even in the exterior, that was always part of the dialogue. Because I mean, you know, me, a designer, that 50 millimeter down line. You know, and that's something that I was really adamant. I think I drove Tad's crazy on that one. I just wanted to get that visually down, but we always kept in mind that head clearance had to be there. You know, whether it's for someone's helmet or their hairstyle. I have to worry about that.
No problem. I know you're going to be around a long time.
Okay, we'll take a couple more.
Kirk and Tom both, on behalf of those of us who are in the market for C7, I would like to thank both of you and your team for your passion, your insight, your foresight, and your dedication to a damn fine car. Thank you.
One more here.
And I'll just echo those thoughts. Great. So a lot went into it. Any insight on a Z06 or Z01 model and make, not that this isn't good enough, but that and then the engine maybe that would be behind it.
What is the Z06?
The only Z car we can talk to today is the Z51. All right.
Okay, one more over here and we'll be done.
How much of your exterior design was dictated to you by the engineers, the chassis, drivetrain engineers? I mean, who's no clue, but...
Well, I would tell you, you know, we work with the folks on keeping all that transparent to the design. You know, we really have a great bunch of engineers that understand the passion of the car. They want the car to be great looking. and they really work with us on stuff. So I think that's why the car is as beautiful as it is because of them being able to work with us. And there's a pull and push there where we have a boundary of what we can get the surface over. They're able to work within that. So I really give the collaboration credit to them.
Just let me add to that too, is that this team, over the course of, again, my career, worked on a number of different generations. But, starting working with Dave Hill, who happens to be here, the wonderful relationship we had with his team working together, learned a lot, actually applied a lot of that learning and had that in our mind from the design standpoint, how to interpret that into this next one. I must say that working with Taj and his team, we would push the limits, and I'll tell you, we had those days we had some pretty spirited discussions, some people would call them arguments, but you know what, if you aren't pushing, if you aren't passionate, and there isn't some emotions that tend to get raised a little bit there on occasion, if you aren't pushing hard enough, and the results are always, I think, outstanding when you have that. The key here is two things, is passion and an open-mindedness to try things and push the limit, and it's been a wonderful experience, I will tell you.
We kind of call that creative tension. There's nothing wrong with creative tension in the process.
Loudly and around the mile or accomplish.
But no, it's all in the best interest. And I would tell you, when we worked on the C6 for Dave Hill, Dave had a great way of pulling me or Tom, the designer, in with the engineer and looking at both of us, saying, you know what, you don't like what we have here, and you two better go figure it out. And so we both had a vested interest in fixing it.
All right, thank you, Tom. Thank you, Kirk. Thank you, whole team. You know you got a winner there, there's no doubt. Now y'all going to go out and buy an acre of land and then go order your C7. Thank you.